from a mentor's perspective of working with the mentee, how can the mentor support the mentee's resource allocation to issues that the mentee brings? Okay, because in the conversation, the mentee is bringing questions that are usually linked to something that needs some kind of an action taken with it, whether it's, I just want to discuss it so I can learn the concepts, or I'm really stymied about how do I do something again. And again, I know from a mentor point of view, it's not that you're sitting there telling them how to do it step by step, okay? Because that's more like instructor training and possibly coaching, okay? I get that part of it. But from a mentor's point of view, how do we help the mentee understand the resource allocation against the issues that they're bringing up? And the way I'm looking at resource allocation, we can open this up as well, is time, effort, and money. Because if the mentee's coming, what time, what effort, and money do you have to deal with this? Because I've had mentees bring things to me which would take so much money that there's no way, it's not necessarily an issue that we can tackle together right now, because you don't have the resources to go out and get that at this point in time.
Right.
Right. There's other ones where it just takes a very short amount of time. There is no money that's required, but it does take a little bit of your effort to get it done. Okay. And therefore, that's another way of looking at it. And I've had those kind of conversations. So I'm gonna be quiet now and just ask, okay, from a mentor's point of view, how do we help the mentee with this resource allocation to issues, time, effort, and money? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that one of the things is for both of us, mentor-mentee, to understand the need for prioritization of issues. But what we also need to understand is that issues, if not addressed, will become a problem. And so going through and prioritizing various issues, I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that if we don't address them, they will become something bigger. They will become a problem. And then that's going to change the whole resource allocation piece of, it's going to take more time, it's going to take more effort, and it could take more money for us to be able to figure it out.
If I might add, from an issue point of view, for me, there are two types of issues. There's the problem issue, which hinders, and then there's the appreciation issue that helps, but we don't always give enough time, effort, and money to that which is working, because we always go over to take care of whatever is not working.
Mm-hmm.
And then often, if you put time, effort, and money into the appreciative issue, that which is working can sometimes take care of that which is not working, and then you don't have to spend time, effort, and money. It's just a different use of the words, and I just wanted to share that with us at this point.
Okay. That's a really good point. Just to expound on that a little bit, when hiring teams, for example, I always look for people who brought different things to the plate. I didn't have to be good at everything, but I brought, people on board that handled. So I always tried to focus on what people did really well. And that's what, as you said, Stephen, what they bring to the table. So in the same context with a mentoring relationship, that's a great point. We tend to always look at what's broken instead of really focusing on, okay, what's working really well? Do you really need to fix that flat tire when you've got another one in reserve, or whatever that looks like? That's probably a poor analogy, but you don't always have to fix what appears to be a problem. And sometimes it's reframing, sometimes it's just repositioning, or just looking at it with a fresh eye. But your point is well taken. What's going well? And why is it going well? And how then can that perhaps offset, occlude, somehow deprioritize the need to deal with what's perceived as an issue?
So from that perspective, being that we brought up priority here, what's a technique or a tool that you would suggest around prioritizing issues, problems, appreciation? How would you prioritize? What might you offer to a mentor that's listening in?
I would probably want to be able to understand the issue that we're talking about. How does it impact the organization as a whole? So, is it something that is causing lost productivity? Is it something that's impacting bottom line? Is it something that's impacting culture of the organization? I would want to have to be able to create a list of different issues that, you know, that we were going to be talking about, so that we could have, I as the mentor would have a better understanding of, so I can guide us where we need to go. And the other part is that making it very clear that my job as your mentor is to guide you, not to tell you what the answers are, that I need to help. We're going to go on a journey together, and what we're going to do is discover what potential solutions may very well be. But it would be to go through something like that.
So I'm hearing the notion of a list and then doing a prioritization of that. So in essence, you are doing what's called facilitative mentoring. You're
Yes.
facilitating the ideas, drawing the ideas, then working with them based on your lived experience to sort out what's going on.
Yeah.
So in essence, there's a couple of tools and techniques that have just been woven together there. Okay.
Yeah.
Linda, do you have any tip, tool, technique that you would offer around prioritization?
No, I think what Doug is saying is really valid and really valuable. It depends very much on the mentee's situation. Is the mentee part of an organization, and the organization is paying for the mentorship or sponsoring the mentorship? Or is this a private individual that's looking for self-improvement? I totally agree with you, Doug. In the case where, you know, it's an organization that's supporting this journey, then you absolutely have to factor in what priority it has insofar as effect on bottom line, on culture, on all of those factors. But if it's an individual that you're looking at mentoring, I think the criteria changes somewhat. I think it becomes, you know, what are the things that are having the greatest impact or holding you back the most? So it becomes more of a personal value statement as opposed to a quantitative value assessment. Does that make sense? Would you agree with that, gentlemen?
To a certain extent, yes. For me, the part that would be important in that conversation would be helping that employee understand the decision-making process. So what's the criteria around how is your organization going to be able to, how do they go about deciding what gets done when and what doesn't get done? So having that conversation so that they're in a better place to be able to understand why things are happening the way they are and how they can actually contribute to that as an individual person or employee.
Right. I guess how I'm likening it is that's somebody who's associated with a more formal organization. What about the solopreneur? What about the person who's, you know, challenged as an individual moving forward with their own business and issues. I think they're just slightly different, slightly different.
So are the challenges that the solopreneur, entrepreneur is dealing with, are they personal or are they more organizational, professional development?
Could be either, could be both. And one could very much be, the problem that's affecting everything else. So again, it's getting to the real heart of the issues and dealing accordingly.
And I think what this does is this takes us back to the listening and hearing, the active listening piece is, and a large part, a lot of corporate mentorship programs always look at the career development side and never look at the personal side.
Right.
And the personal,
Sorry.
yeah, and the personal is what can become an obstacle or barrier to being able to move forward on the professional development side.
Right. And vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something to be said for this priority aspect, because it's one of those elements or a process that we jump to really quick. We go, okay, let's prioritize this, and so we can move on. And again, I think I would add this concept of what's the white space between all the statements that you're looking at. So when you go to prioritize them, and there could be anything from, I remember Edward de Bono used plus, minus, and interesting for each one. What's plus, minus, and interesting about each of those statements? And then you can figure out the next level, because it sort of answers the so what, getting at what's the benefit if you do something with it kind of idea. That's one of the things that I would offer. The other one is that notion of continue, stop, and start. Is this statement something I want to continue? Is it something I want to stop? Or is it something I promised me to start something? Right? That could be a prioritization, right? And I know that there is the ranking systems that you can use and all that. And at some point in time, I'd love to dive into one called SUG, Seriousness, Urgency, and Growth. And it's a really wonderful technique. I think maybe I'll shoot a video on it, just like if any of you have other tools and techniques around prioritization, shooting a video and we can put it up into the library, because this is where this one is going to go as well. Then that would be really great. So, anything else around this notion of the mentor understanding the resource allocation of time, effort, and money for the mentee? Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah.
Well, then I'll just jump in with one more. All right. The time, effort, and money together is what you've got to save yourself, right? It's a challenge that is there for you. You've got to save yourself the time, effort, and money. And that actually spells the word system. Save yourself time, effort, and money. And the other element to this is that this prioritization is when you add the S to system and make it systems, because you are creating systems, that S to me is representing safer. So this prioritization for the mentee that the mentor is going to help with, right, from this resource allocation aspect, is we, as a mentor, taking care of the mentee in a sense, have to be alert to, if they're going to assign time, effort, and money, is it a safer, not only from a physical point of view, but from a mental point of view, a soulful point of view, a spiritual point of view, right, a social point of view, is that we don't want to leave the mentee leaving that conversation thinking that, I'll just go do it, but not taking into consideration the safer aspect of this resource allocation out into the world, not only for themselves, but the recipients of them actually taking action. And that's something that I learned from doing many, many, many different types of facilitative mentoring. That's a term I tend to use. Because I wanted the person to truly understand, is this safe for you? And is it safe for those you're going to interact with? Or are you going to cause more difficulty because of what we talked about? Because if it is, we need to talk more. We need to share more, figure something out here. And that's why I always say, just because we talked about it doesn't mean you go out and do it.
Mm.
As a mentor to the mentee, just because we've talked about it, just because we've shared, just because we've dialogued, doesn't mean you immediately go out and do it. Whereas other educating approaches will sort of support, well, take action now, right? Based on what we just shared and talked about, take action, take action, take action. We have to, as mentors, really pay attention to that. Just don't go boom out there and assign time, effort, and money and make it happen, because that may not help. Thoughts about that?
That makes perfect sense. Again, I think it's clearly understanding the role of a mentor as a guide and not as an instructive taskmaster that a coach would be. So it's clearly understanding the difference, our role, and making sure that both parties are clearly in alignment and agreement with what mentoring is and what our relationship is.
And I think that goes back to understanding what is the boundary of a mentor, what is the boundary of a coach, how do those two interact, just like facilitating, counseling, shifting, instructing, consulting, like these, what are these boundaries? And if you were in the mentor one, how does this interact with the other ones, right? It's really important. So.
Yeah, no, very important. Great point.
Thank you. I learned the hard way.
That's how we usually learn our best lessons.
Yes.
It was those earlier conversations, right? But where I learned it the most was when I was the mentee. Because I would go out and take action based on the conversation, and I'd come back all excited going, oh, this is what I did, and it was because of this, and that my mentor would sit there. Oh, really? Tell me more. Share more. And then after a couple of those, I started to go as a mentee. So when I flipped to do my mentor work, I went, no, hang on, I'm going to have to catch this a little sooner. My mentor helped me to figure that out. And I've had 4 great mentors in my life. And it was the second one that really gave me that understanding. Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and that's truly, it doesn't matter how old we are to be great mentors. It's about our experience. It's about the wisdom that we've garnered on the journey. And yeah, you got that pretty early, I suspect, in your journey. And so you've been able to share that wisdom all the way along. And that's truly the gift.
Yeah. So,
that experience and wisdom sharing.